and welcome to the Sunday Guardian show by Joyeeta Basu. Viewers, as you know, as I have been in fact mentioning in all my shows wherever I'm talking about Mr. Trump and the US, everyone is in a tizzy. The whole world is in a tizzy. I mean, every pronunciation by Mr. Trump is being greeted by the world with utter dismay. But the thing is that every tweet he sends out, particularly when it comes to India and Pakistan, every third day he's talking about how he stopped a nuclear war. He's this great white blonde hero who has stopped a nuclear war. But actually, what has he done when it comes to, say, for example, what is happening right now between Russia and Ukraine? Let's hope there is no nuclear war. But he's not tweeting about it at all. He's totally keeping quiet. And with all this tariff and all, what exactly is going on? To discuss all this and much more, I have a very distinguished guest with me, Dr. Tara Kartha, who is former Director, National Security Council Secretariat, and currently Director, Research for Center for Land Warfare Studies. Welcome, Dr. Kartha, to the show.
Thank you.
So what do you think? What is your assessment about what is going on with Mr. Trump?
That's it'll probably take a PhD thesis to answer that. But see, overall what I want to say in terms of the broader thing, in terms of whatever Trump does, as you're absolutely right, he brings out comment after comment which then roils even the market, right? So it's creating a lot of problem. But there are certain fundamentals that you have to take into account we're talking of India, US and the rest of the world. One fundamental thing is that the US will never allow any other power to compete with it. This is a constant, right? Which means China is a given. In China, US, no matter what trade occurs, no matter President Xi throws up the whole Chinese market, that is not going to change as far as the larger US administration. Second thing arising from that is the fact that the Indo-Pacific then becomes a priority for the US administration across, not just the White House. The White House doesn't always, a US president doesn't always control the entire US policy. There are certain, basics which don't change. Like I said, in terms of keeping US defense active in the Pacific, in terms of the kind of technology they seek, all these. And another fundamental thing which Trump is also following, which is moving away from China in terms of minerals, in terms of what kind of your supply chains. These are constants. Now, in that comes this whole Trump's talk about, and unfortunately some of his advisors, as also we were discussing, who have very little knowledge. We are talking of advisors. We're not talking about the bureaucracy. Advisors who don't seem to know some of the basics about US-India relationship. That is a problem.
And one of the basics is that you do not equate India with Pakistan.
Exactly. I mean, where is this even coming from? But, Joyeeta, there is an interesting thing which most people don't realize. This was when I was in Washington. He, at that time, made an offer for mediation when Imran Khan was there. I think this was 2019. Before that, again twice he asked for mediation. So he's in this business. He's done this before. This is not a new Trump. This is just Trump being Trump. So we quietly pushed that under the carpet at that time because there was no crisis. Now he's using this present, I won't even call it a crisis, this limited conflict which we had, to push his own agenda of saying, I am the greatest and I will help in everything. Now, what I want to say is, the problem which most people see is Trump is transactional. So therefore, fine, if he's transactional, good for me. Because vis-a-vis Pakistan, I have a 10 times larger market. So in terms of transactions, I am far better placed to offer him a deal than Pakistan is. And I think the latest news is that we are well on our way towards a trade deal. And second, there is underpinning this is a genuine, let me ask you, if you were to send your children abroad, will you send them to Russia or to US? You will send them to the US. So there is an underlying sort of sympathy, empathy, if you call it that, between these two countries. They are democracies. We are both very noisy. We are both very, we are very up, in your face in terms of our statements. So that's okay. The Indo-US relationship has been built over the years into so many areas. I have lost count of the number of working groups there are. That is the base on which we are continuing. So, in fact, I'd like to, if I may,
Yeah, of course.
just one thing. While Operation Sindoor was in place, was going on, your Quad meeting was going on in Hawaii. It was a tabletop exercise on logistics. That was going on. Immediately, or it was, if I forget the exact date, it was in that same space of time, there was a US delegation here in India to discuss cooperation on aircraft carriers. So, what I'm trying to say is, they keep coming. This is a continuous process, which is quite separate from the trade issue. Nobody wants this to stop. So, this generally the media doesn't see. They only see the upfront, the trade threats and all, which is being dealt with by the trade representatives. It doesn't really impinge on your foreign policy, on your security policy.
No, but then isn't it a bit like, I would say dysfunctional that way? The administration itself has comes across as dysfunctional when it talks with many voices and when it is operating at many levels. Because ultimately, when it comes to the public face, it is the president, and the president is coming across as extremely frivolous at times when it comes to India-US relations, and at times it seems that he's almost taking the wrecking ball to the relationship and he's going to destroy it.
No, I don't think so, because, like I said, he keeps saying Modi is a great friend of mine. He puts that in as well. But he's also talking about like this statement on saying that I got India and Pakistan to, to come to the table because I use trade as a lever. I'm like, how does that even work? Are you going to give me trade benefits if I stop war? He's not going to give trade benefits to anybody. Right? So that is a very strange statement. Separately, the what I'm a little concerned about is that the US in Pakistan, they've always remained in Pakistan. Let us take it as a given,
Yeah.
in different forms. Now they're talking of cooperation in minerals. And this is where we come into the Pakistanis are basically saying, here's Balochistan. They have about 90 odd, very, very critical minerals. And you take it, you deal with the situation. Very smart move, right? Because they then wash their hands off and say, you deal with it. But the danger in that is that I wouldn't put it past the Baloch to say, fine, go ahead and take the strategic minerals, but give us independence. You give me independence, I'll give you the minerals. So it can play, and with Trump being a transactional president, it can work either way. There's no moral issues here anymore. What you once had, all this talk of democracy and you had values and all that is out of the window. So if I have a transactional president, the idea is to give him a transaction he can't resist.
Yeah, but then China is sitting there. Will China, move away and let US have the playing field?
No, they won't. Obviously, that's a good
And
question.
the CPEC is also there. Gwadar is there. China is fortifying Gwadar. What is going on?
So there is, unfortunately, what is happening is we are right in the middle of a new Cold War. And what was once towards Russia has shifted to our part of the world. That is dangerous for us. And incidentally, I also, though people were making a lot about the strategic minerals deal, at the same time, they also had a meeting with 5 Central Asian republics, again on strategic minerals. So what I'm saying is, if they are indeed trying to sort of, break the supply chain dependency on China, good for us. So this can work either way. It depends on how the situation unfolds and how dynamic they are. They and India are on their feet. This is a very dynamic situation. So you need to be very agile, which we are not always. So So that's the only problem.
So what exactly is India doing right now?
I think in terms of the foreign ministry, you've got the foreign secretary who's one of our exceptional officers. Vikram Misri is a man of huge experience, and you saw how he handled Sindoor. He was not, there was no beating of the chest and sort of saying, I will do this, that. It was very, very restrained. He's a person, I think, who has earned respect across. He's handling the Indo-US relationship. He's just come back from the US. And I think the emphasis there was on that compact, which replaces the earlier ITEC in terms of they're concentrating on technology, innovation and talent. So these are areas where we have much to offer because, just in January, 11 innovation firms in India were selected by the US defense industry. Before that were another five, Sagar, there's a bunch of people whom I can't really list out here, who are already involved in defense innovation in the US. So this is one way to go. And then, of course, I think they had a conversation on FATF, which is interesting, the Financial Action Task Force. My only reservation there would be that your priorities should not be decided by Pakistan.
Yeah.
Pakistan is a much, much lower priority for me than my larger mind. Getting my economy straight, getting the Indo-Pacific policy going, getting my shipping in order. So I am hoping that we won't trade our counters for this FATF thing. But then that's a decision which has to be taken at the higher levels. I have no one to decide.
No, but then at the same time, Pakistani terror is a fact of life, and when it comes to the people, the public, that is what it affects them. And so we have to, but at the same time, the US, beyond lip service, does not seem very serious about it. And in fact, when we are talking about the FATF, I mean, India maybe is taking a lot in terms of trying to get Pakistan on that grey list again. But the way Mr. Trump is functioning, I mean, not for once is he mentioning about terrorism and Pakistan, which he did in his first term. What are the chances of us being able to... I mean, Mr. Trump will be the one who will be vetoing it. Not only because of minerals, we will talk about the crypto thing also.
I don't think he'll veto it because, see, like I said, there are certain constants in this relationship. One constant is that the US intel is very well aware of what is going on in Pakistan. So they have their eyes on who is doing what, which, Pakistan very cleverly uses to its advantage. So just when Trump's inauguration was taking place, they handed over one terrorist and said, here he is, here's this guy for you. So they are adept at using this into their favor. So if I was a US intel guy, I would not want to break relations with Pakistan because there is a certain dependency there. But to your question, it's very difficult because as of now, it's all about Ukraine, it's all about Gaza. Nobody seems to care about terrorism anymore. Though, as recently as in March, a huge Pakistani module was disrupted in Spain. A terror module which was indoctrinating people, including women. I mean, there were women also involved. These are dangerous characters coming out. They are all over Europe. They are in the US. I mean, you've seen some of their activities which are gone, but for some reason it's just gone off the files. It's not gone out of intel. But, in government, it's all about what file comes up on your table, and there's nothing on terrorism.
It's amazing. How did this happen? Because given that the 7th October attack happened in Israel, and ever since, and now we are being told that Pakistani terrorists and basically Pakistan Hamas, they are coming together, Al-Qaeda. How is it possible, and with what we are witnessing in Europe as well? And now the US is also witnessing some lone wolf attacks. How is it possible that terrorism is no longer a factor when it comes to international conversations? Or is it because we are not seeing anything because Mr. Trump wants a good deal, quote unquote, whatever be it, whatever be the nature of it, he doesn't want it raised?
No, I wouldn't put it entirely on Trump, to be fair.
Okay.
To an extent, we also dropped the ball, as it were, because we got
Okay.
so busy over the last more than 6, 7 years. But since Prime Minister Modi has come, he's been concentrating on getting India on the global stage, which he's done.
Yeah.
The economy is growing. Your West Asia policy is brilliant. Your Quad is ongoing. Your relations with much of the African states, the global South, that's what he's concentrating on. And with the attack on Balakot, effectively terrorism had virtually stopped.
The one that happened
Yeah,
earlier.
2000, in earlier, the Balakot
Huh.
airstrikes, where you sent a
Post
message.
Pulwama.
Yeah, if you get funny with us, we will strike you. Where that's again, I mean, it was clear it would go off the rails at some point. So I think we also got obsessed, not obsessed, we were more emphatic on the Chinese threat, rightly so, because that is where your real threat comes from. Pakistan is like an extension counter for China. So you also took your eyes off the terrorism aspect, which we should have been pushing all the time. But we were doing a lot of other good stuff, right? Now to get terrorism back on the table is going to be a bit of a problem. You have to sit and do your think tanks. You have to get into the US think tank community. We are not there. The Pakistanis are all over.
How did this happen?
Bad policy. Sorry, there it is. You don't see it as a policy priority to dominate the think tank. I mean, you think you can do it all through your official circles, which is they're doing a fantastic job, but you also need to get into the academia and make it again a perspective. Like, how many articles have come down on Sindoor? The last, I think, 1 week, we've seen at least 6 people writing from abroad on Sindoor without the least understanding, not all, some of them, that this is a reaction to a terrorist attack. I mean, how about, so that perspective will come out only if you have people in the US who are real experts on India. I'm sorry, there are very, very few.
Yes. The thing is that, you see, now can we talk a little bit about this crypto thing? What do you think it's actually feasible, or is it actually Pakistan trying to, it's a fraud that they are trying to pull on Trump, if not Trump directly, people who surround Trump? Because I was reading one article which says Steve Witkoff's son, Steve Witkoff is the West Asia envoy, his son, Zach, is totally involved in it, and he's the one who has been going around telling Pakistan, oh my god, you are sitting on trillions of dollars of rare earth. But yeah, he is also right in the middle of that cryptocurrency thing, and it seems the Pakistan government is also getting involved in a very big way. They think there's a quick get rich scheme for them.
I think they met with the great Field Marshal as well.
Failed Marshal.
So the Field Marshal and his cronies are involved in all of these things. They are sitting on top of that so-called Strategic Facilitation Council. Now the only thing is, the last I heard is that they've shot down the Crypto Council. There is some problem with it. The government has said this is not feasible as of now. Under the present legislation, we need more carefully look at it. So that as of now has not taken off. But see, you have to give full marks to an adversary. The first thing is to understand your adversary. They are using all levers they can, and to get into the Trump family. What are you doing? So I'm not saying Pakistan is, what I'm trying to say is, you have to, like, again, little more nimble in seeing where you can look at. If a transactional president, I'm repeating myself, give him the right transaction.
And gifts.
Gifts, perhaps. I mean, we are not in that category that we give. We are in a little more responsible, mature state. But give him the right transaction. There's trade to be done. So you can even, if you so wish, this is a strategy you need to look at. Your aim is to end terrorism. To end terrorism, you need to get the Pakistani army out. To get the Pakistani army out, you need to involve Pakistani business and trade interests. Once that takes off with US help, if he is genuinely saying trade, 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 get that going.
Where is the trade? That is a question as an Indian I have been asking. Where is the trade? I mean, given the size of the Pakistan's economy. So when Mr. Trump is
Yeah.
talking about trade, where is the trade? It is, I think, even Tamil Nadu's economy is larger than Pakistan's.
Absolutely right, yes. They've hardly, in fact, they import even their food. They've got nothing.
Yeah, they have got some
broke.
marble statues and cups and all. That is something that they have biryani masala, by the way.
Your Lahori food, right?
Yeah.
So, indeed, yes. But yeah, it doesn't make sense at all. But if you were to look at Pakistan as a transit corridor, which is what, if you remember, General Bajwa had offered Pakistan to be this, and Imran Khan backed off at the last minute. This was all part of a larger initiative. He backed off. Otherwise, Pakistan as a transit corridor can mint money. Because there's the whole Central Asian trade, there's
Yes.
Russian trade, there's Iranian trade, there's a bunch of things which we can do together. Climate change, for God's sake, both Mumbai and Karachi and are all underwater. So you have very, very strong problems which you have to deal with in common. But the trouble is the Pakistan army will never allow it, which is why the Prime Minister Modi said, he says our war is not with the people of Pakistan. It is with this malignant army. So if you can, your strategy should be to get the people on board with genuine problems, daily problems which all of us face, and get those going and sideline these guys.
But isn't a section of the population is very radicalized, given that kind of stuff that we have been hearing about, in terms of blasphemy, people
Oh,
doing
yes.
and all these things. I mean, can we really, when we are talking about Pakistan, can we really be hopeful that the people of Pakistan will be very pro-India, friendly, they will shed their extreme mindset? Doesn't
See,
look like
on
it.
the one hand, if you read when you read Pakistani newspapers, every time they compare themselves to us. They says, look at India, they're doing this. Look at them, look at how they're growing. So there is that constant envy of wanting to be like, I mean, everybody wants to grow, right? But your point is very right. In the foreseeable future, I would not open my borders to any Pakistani.
Exactly.
That is also a reality. I mean, there is definitely a section. I mean, you saw the protests on Palestine. While, of course, the bombing of Palestine is tragic. I mean, it's a very, very sad thing. But the kind of crowds and the yelling and the screaming which is going on in much of Pakistan states which is being encouraged by the army for its own interests is it's a bit scary. There's a lot of sympathy here also. After all, there are children there, right? Palestinian. There is
Actually, there is
sympathy.
mixed because you see
And Israel for us, I mean, they were victim of terrorist attacks.
huge terrorist
Yeah,
attacks.
so our hearts are with Israel for a bunch of reasons.
Yes.
But there is also the humanitarian crisis. But this, like you said, the radicalism aspect is not something I would ever want to import from Pakistan. I'm okay with trade. You keep your radicals to yourself.
Yeah. Now, so when we are talking about, of course, in terms of policy, I mean, it seems like it's a two-track thing. The president and his immediate circle, they are moving on some track, and the other track that you talked about, which is kind of more balanced. A lot of work is happening over there. You must have seen the latest statement coming from the U.S. Treasury Secretary, Howard Lutnick, where he has talked about that the Indian government has been doing things that has rubbed the US in the wrong way. Say, for example, you generally buy your military gear from Russia, that the US will not like. And then he has talked about how you are in BRICS and you are moving to support basically, you're going against dollar and dollar hegemony. I mean, if this is the knowledge level of our Treasury Secretary, who doesn't even understand. Even the Biden administration had a better understanding of India's legacy issues when it comes to Russian arms. BRICS, I am not so certain whether they understand or not. What do you have to say about this? I mean, this is a sheer lack of, is it just ignorance or willful ignorance?
I think that's a good question. Is it willful ignorance? I hadn't honestly thought of that, perhaps. They're trying to sort of pressure you into getting out of breaks.
Deliberate and to
Yeah,
an
but
extent,
why
huh?
on earth would I want de-dollarization? It has
Exactly.
no logic to it whatsoever. Because I would hardly want the Chinese currency coming up, right? So the dollarization, I'm okay with it. It goes with it, and they should actually be happy that India is part of an organization where they have no other friends, right? So at least we are there. But in terms of Russian military hardware, while yes, it has gone down, but in the recent conflict, it is finally you had to rely on BrahMos and the S300s. So,
S400.
sorry, S400s. So now you've entered into a deal for this BrahMos continuance. Russia gives you an extent, not much, but some extent of production here and transfer of technology, very limited. If the US does the same, well, the market is open. Who's preventing you? I mean, where is the whole G engines? But what happened to that deal? So, the key to the US market, and which the Prime Minister insists on very rightly, make in India as much as you can, and you export from here. I mean, you had the Trump recently telling Apple, no, don't produce. I mean, what signal are you sending? How will I rely on a country which at any moment may change its mind about defense exports? So you give me the confidence which is making in India, then we are open to doing business with them. I mean, their technology is far better, there's no doubt. R&D, Russian R&D has definitely gone down, but Russia at least is a trusted partner. And in times of need, you need people who will deliver what you want.
I have a question in this regard. When you're talking about Russia, I mean, this is exactly not exactly about the US, of course. When we are talking about Russia as a trusted partner, Russia is also very close to China. So when we come to a situation like that, I mean, there is a buzz. I mean, if you ask the Russians, they will say, in case of, God forbid, of a quote unquote, even a limited conflict between China and India, we are going to go neutral. Can we really trust Russia?
Mm, yeah,
I know it's a tough one.
It's a tough one. But all I can say without going into detail is so far so good. I mean, we've got what we wanted, even at the cost of Russia sometimes annoying. The S400s. China didn't want them to give it to us, they gave it to us anyway. So it's Russians are also a little, though they're also now becoming transactional, but there is more of an what shall I say, a sentimental attachment to India, because we've been really close for so many years. These many of them speak our languages better than I do. Some of the Russians speak better Hindi than me, but my worry is that the war has really hit at their R&D. That is where the problem is. So if I want cutting edge technology, I still have to go to the US. That is a problem. So either I make do with what there is, which at the moment is terrific, but in the future, and the US knows that, which is why the war is there in the first place, that you may have to, look at, but we are now taking from the French. The bottom line is nobody is going to give you critical technologies, no one. But you have to climb that ladder yourself. So that's how it's going.
So, would you say that we are climbing that ladder?
Oh, yes, we are.
If you can just tell our viewers a little more.
See, for instance, like Tata Aerospace, they've started the MROs for the C-130s, if my memory serves me right, the maintenance and repairs. We've started logistics agreements, which is what Quad was all about. We've started, some of our firms are supplying software for the Predator drones. So you are slowly, but the sad part is, it's a lot of it is our own fault, because your systemic problem, you don't let innovation come up. The big players are okay, like say Tata Aerospace. Now they are able to take that, take even what little they get from foreign, like Airbus. The Airbus has signed a deal with them. That little technology, they will take it a step forward. But innovators don't have that kind of money. They need solid support, and we've got some brilliant young people. That support has to come. It has to come now, and it has to come quickly.
So, are we evolving in terms of, say, for example, again, as I said, this is not exactly about India, US, say the drone technology, and we see the kind of role drones are now playing in modern warfare, and we are also deployed so many. Do we have that kind of scale to manufacture what China is able to right now?
You have the potential to manufacture. As of the time of speaking, no,
No, we don't.
because you don't give them that space. You have to not see them as you're doing them an innovation firm a favor by giving them a contract. No, see them as your the jewel in your crown. These are the people who can make that difference for you. So give them the money, let them. I mean, there's a whole process here which I'm not going into, which has to be changed from the bottom up. Then you will reach somewhere, and it has to be done very, very quickly. Because right now, what we're seeing is what we call grey hybrid warfare, which means you're at war all the time. It's 24/7, so you have to be alert all the because it's not just about planes and guns and all that stuff. It's the rest of it is the grey zone stuff, which could be a virus, which could be communal divisions, which could be it's across the board. Information warfare, the stuff that you're seeing, the rubbish you're seeing on social media. So you need to keep your eye out all the time. For all this, you need to take our immense talent along with you. That's all I have to say on that.
Yeah. Now, getting back to India, US, specifically in terms of Quad, that you said that a Quad meeting was taking place even when all this turmoil was happening. Uh, is there a future for Quad without having a security teeth to it? Without it becoming a security alliance, number one, which India is very opposed to. But can we be in our neighborhood? Do we need to be in a security alliance with the US and some other countries as well? I'm not talking in terms of a mini NATO and all that, but some kind of a security alliance. In this context, of course, we have to think in terms of our policy of multilateralism. So a whole lot of things are coming into play over here.
Well, if I had the slide with me, I would show you that. We are already into it in terms of so many alliances. You've got one going in terms of IORA, the whole IORA network. Then you've got the Quad. Then you've got bilaterals with France. Exercise. I'm talking of exercises. Then you've got exercises with Russia. So you're already pretty much all
Multilateral.
Yeah. But what you do have, which is very important, is what we call maritime domain awareness.
Okay.
So that extends upwards and downwards pretty much without going into a lot of it. It gives you what shall I say, a look at what threat is coming up in the short term, and in addition, what it does, it melds militaries together, because you've got their guys sitting in certain locations in India and watching this taking place. So the main thing is to develop that trust at the working levels, and that is happening with Quad countries and with the French sometimes, with the Russians perhaps not so much, because that's a different ball game. But that at the working level, you have to be able to understand each other's systems. But here, your Indo-Pacific will come really into play if you bring up your maritime capability. Where do you have the ships? So, right, that's why this government, fantastic initiatives, they are encouraging the shipping industry. So get others to produce ships here. You open that up, then you actually have an Indian. Right now, you're sitting in your waters and saying Indian Ocean. You have a naval capability which is growing very slowly, but it's growing compared to China extremely slowly, but it's getting there. But finally, it is about whether you have the shipping to be able to have an independent policy in the Indo-Pacific, and that applies also to defense manufacturing. You cannot be an independent actor until you manufacture your own things. And that the Prime Minister, I should tell you, has this as a central notion. This is very, I mean, I'm not being overly, this thing, but the Modi, Prime Minister Modi, he has a vision on this. He knows where we have to go, and he's not the kind who doesn't understand the larger, aspects of this. So we'll get there.
Yeah, when you are talking about maritime capabilities, are we in a position to go to South China Sea? Because this has to be seen in the context of, this is a question often asked by US commentators. Will India join us if China attacks Taiwan? Will India join us in the South China Sea in basically defending Taiwan, basically taking on China? So what are you, I know my questions are going a little.
No, it's a good question. In fact, there's a whole paper written on the subject by from prominent US institution, basically saying India will never come to aid.
Yes, they keep saying this.
The question is, you disaggregate what is aid. What is the cooperation that you want? There is a lot you can do without even being physically there. Without going into too much of detail. But you can at least be in the Indian Ocean strategic choke points, which we will. We are already there. So, I don't see, honestly speaking, do I expect the reverse? Do I expect China, US to come running to my aid if I have a war with China? I don't. Then why would you expect that I will commit boots on the ground for your war with Taiwan? So, I don't want the US here at all, but I need other assistance, quote unquote, other assistance from them, which I get. So that's what I'm trying to say. When you have cooperation, it will be in areas which are not obvious and which will not be told to the academics to write those papers. So I'll just stop there.
So, are you hopeful about India-US relations? Have they been Trump-proofed enough to survive, again, Mr. Trump?
I think so. Because it's so diverse. And
Please give it a little more in detail, perhaps.
In terms of technology, like I said, in terms of talent, in terms of energy,
yes,
the green revolution, green energy, in terms of space, your new satellite Nisar, which is supposed to overlook the entire Himalayas, is a joint US enterprise. So there is, like I said, aircraft carriers. In terms of logistics, this is a key area which we are not going fast enough. You need to be able to offer that, operationalize that logistics agreement, because, for a second, if I can just look at the map of India from China. What you see is that big coastline sticking out into the Indian Ocean. That is what you should prioritize. So these areas, in terms of even, I think, in terms of agriculture, there is hundreds of areas where this is going on, virtually on a daily basis. So the base has got so wide, I don't think anyone can just switch it off.
Even Mr. Trump cannot do it.
No, some of it is with Japan, some of it with Australia. So there's a bunch of countries who are working together. Look at the number of working groups under Quad itself. So these are ongoing stuff, and there are hundreds of departments involved. So Trump proofing is, it's not really a problem. To put it very honestly. Trade is damaged.
Yes, we are getting a hit. Say, for example, in steel and all these things.
Yes, that is a problem. Now, the question is, to handle that is the job of the commerce and the ministries who are doing that, but the rest of it continues. Unless it comes into such a crisis. Like he said, I think he increased the tariffs. He said, if you don't do it, we will increase it to X%. That is a problem, and India could... I think Europe is also, a lot of countries are beginning to, hit back. This is not something he can do unilaterally to everybody. He's taken on the whole world at once.
We have gone to WTO already with the steel thing.
Yeah. No, but apart from that, if you fight with everybody, sooner or later all of them are going to come together and say, come on, you can't do this. So the blowback will begin soon. Meanwhile, like I said, the day-to-day affairs of India-US relations carries on.
Okay. I'm so very happy to hear that. Thank you, Ms. Kartha, for coming for this show.